It was a warm afternoon in Inglewood, California, when a well-dressed man pulled into a gas station in his car. He parked the vehicle and walked into the store, a small bell above the door announcing his arrival. Inside, several customers bustled about, clearly preoccupied with their shopping intentions. The man's face remained a stoic mask as he approached the cashier, recognizing the same clerk from his visit last week. "You charged me for 2 cups of coffee last week," the man said in a monotone voice, his eyes fixed on the cashier. The cashier, seemingly perplexed, replied, "Who are you?" The man tilted his head slightly to the right and remained emotionless. He continued to stare unblinkingly at the cashier. "When I poured my coffee and put some creamer in it, I took a sip to taste it. But you accused me of drinking my coffee and refilling it without paying and charged me for 2 cups, said the man, still with an emotionless expression. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know you." "Get out of here," said the cashier angrily, furrowing his brow in frustration. Without changing his expression, the man's gaze wandered upwards and briefly touched the ceiling before turning back to the cashier. He then pulled out a firearm and fired 3 shots into the cashier's chest. Panic broke out in the store as customers screamed and fled towards the exit, their hearts pounding. The cashier lay in a pool of blood, gasping for breath. The man approached the countertop, his face still emotionless, and examined the cashier with a disturbing detachment. The wounded cashier was gasping for breath, blood seeping from his chest and mouth. Moments later, the police arrived and surrounded the gas station. They used a megaphone to ask the man to leave the store with his hands up. The man went to the door and opened it with a blank stare. A number of police officers pointed their guns at him and shouted at him to drop his weapon and raise his hands. The man's emotionless facade held firm as he dropped the firearm to the ground. His gaze remained fixed on the gun at his feet. One of the officers approached cautiously and asked the man to raise his hands. But the man did nothing, his empty eyes staring at the gun on the ground. The police officer, determined to arrest the man, quickly approached him and locked his left wrist from behind before handcuffing him with his right hand. The man refused to take his eyes off the firearm. Miranda warnings were read, and several officers rushed back into the store when they discovered the cashier's lifeless body. They radioed for an ambulance as a matter of urgency. As the man stood in the grip of the law, his cold gaze remained fixed on the gun at his feet. Slowly, the man turned his gaze from the gun to the police officer, said, "I don't feel anything." After a while, an FBI detective, Audrey Hutton, showed up. She had appeared at many crime scenes since last year, even if they were not in her jurisdiction. Most of the cases involved satanic and cult-like murders. She approached a police officer and introduced herself. The police officer was surprised to see an FBI agent showed up at some sort of incident. She told the police officer that she just needed to ask a few questions about the incident, which could possibly be related to the other crimes she was investigating throughout California. The police officer reluctantly led her to the police car where the man was being held. The man was sitting in it, his hands cuffed in the back. He sat quietly, just staring at one point. The police officer opened the door and told him that the FBI agent was going to ask him a few questions. Audrey took a picture from her files. It was a print from a surveillance camera. The blurry picture showed a black retro-style car. She showed him the picture and asked him if he had been in this car in the city center 3 days ago. The man slowly turned his gaze to the picture. "That's the demon's car. Avoid the mirrors," he said in a monotone voice, and turned his gaze back to where he had been staring. The detective asked more questions about the car and the incident, but the man didn't say a word, nor did he even change his gaze from the point he was staring at. The police officer convinced the detective that he would not answer any more of her questions. He closed the door, and Audrey went back to her car to leave the scene. A few days after the incident, on a Friday night, Amy and Elizabeth came out of the bar where they were meeting at the weekend. The after effects of the alcohol they had consumed made them a little woozy. "Why do you want to leave so early? The night has only just begun." "We'll party until dawn, baby," Elizabeth pleaded, dancing as she tried to persuade Amy to stay. "I'll make it up to you next week. I've to get up early tomorrow. I have plans with my cousins," Amy replied. "All right, babe, have fun, but I want to celebrate because tomorrow is Saturday," Elizabeth said with a smile as she continued to dance. Amy pulled out her phone and opened the Uber app to request a ride. "Girl, you should try the retro mode. It's so cool," Elizabeth suggested. "Retro mode?" Amy inquired. "Yeah, it's been a while. You can ride in a 1960s Chevy, an Impala, or if you're lucky, maybe a sexy Mustang." "This is California, baby," Elizabeth exclaimed. "Anything is possible." Amy checked the app and selected retro mode. "Find your classic vehicle" appeared on the screen, and she entered her address and pickup location and tapped the confirm button. "I hope this mode isn't more expensive than the normal one," Amy said thoughtfully. "Don't worry, babe. Probably just a few dollars more," Elizabeth assured her. A clicking sound from the app indicated that the driver was on his way. Amy checked the app to see the driver's information, which displayed the name David Worth. "David Worth?" Amy giggled. "That's my driver's name." "It's worth it, baby," Elizabeth chimed in, and they both laughed. "He'll be here in 2 minutes. You don't have to wait for me. Go in and enjoy your night," Amy told Elizabeth and hugged her. "Okay, babe, I love you," Elizabeth said. "I love you too," Amy replied, before Elizabeth went back to the bar. Amy's curiosity about the car brand Volga piqued her interest. She had never heard of it before, so she decided to look it up while she waited. The pictures of the different Volga models filled her search results, and she was intrigued by the different designs. Soon the retro car arrived, a black vehicle unlike any she had ever seen. "Amy?" the driver asked. He was a man in his mid-30s with short black hair. "Yes," Amy confirmed before getting into the car. "East 68th Street?" the driver inquired. "Yes, that's right," Amy replied. As they drove, Amy remained fascinated by the unique car.